Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So we're now at the halfway point of the Billboard Hot 100 year, so let's take stock of the whole situation 26 weeks in. And while I wouldn't quite say it was a disappointment, it was certainly interesting to see how certain trends have kind of oscillated. R&B and neo-soul are fighting pop for dominance, with pop arguably getting the upper hand, which I didn't expect. Country has mostly stayed quiet to flush out the last dregs of bro country out of its system. All sorts of offbeat, weird tracks have fought their way up from both electronica and the indie scene, and hip-hop continues to marginalize talent and wordplay in favor of the lowest common denominator. Sure, I might lament the failure of a couple promising pop and country tracks, but the rise of new crunk and the prevalence of Vine have driven more than its fair share of forgettable garbage to the top in expense of better songs. And the most alarming thing is that it just keeps happening. Now, we'll get to more of this soon, but for now, let's take a look at our top 10. Unsurprisingly, See You Again by Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth continues to ride huge streaming and solid airplay gains against steadily shrinking sales to the top spot. At this point, it's looking to take over the airplay peak completely on the radio, and unless it suddenly slows down out of nowhere, it will probably get there. Behind it, we got Trap Queen by Fetty Wap, which looks like it might be stuck at number 2 because even though airplay kind of peaked, and even despite good sales, huge streaming, and finally breaking on YouTube, I don't see it getting quite enough of a push just yet. And in the case of Earned It by The Weeknd at number 3, the push is effectively over. Serious drops in airplay, not great sales, only where it is thanks to radio inertia and huge streaming, and I see it falling soon, potentially being dethroned by Shut Up and Dance at number 4, which despite slowing airplay gains and still no YouTube, it had streaming gains and still great sales. This pushes Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars down to number 5, which is losing in all categories except YouTube, but not as quickly as you would think. It's still got some inertia on its side, probably enough to hold off Want to Want Me by Jason Derulo for a little bit longer, as it rises up to number 6 thanks to radio gains, solid sales, and some decent streaming, but I'm not quite sure the growth is just enough to push it over the top yet. It was enough to push back Sugar by Maroon 5 to number 7, which took hits all across the board again, except, again on YouTube, and Love Me Like You Do by Ellie Goulding to number 8, which had worse sales and streaming, but isn't losing airplay that quickly. Of course, this leaves a gap, which means Nasty Freestyle by T-Wayne is back in the top 10 at number 9. Once again, it's here because of streaming and sales, and once one burns out, I don't see this having longevity, because the radio sure as hell isn't jumping on board, and thank God for that. And to round out our group, thinking out loud, Ed Sheeran. Not a lot to say, losses across the board except YouTube again, and particularly bad in sales. Once again, as soon as we get some stronger competition coming up for the summer, I don't see this lasting whatsoever. And on that note, let's talk about our losers and dropouts. Hefty chunk of both this week, with dropouts like Lips Are Moving by Meghan Trainor and thankfully Ain't Worth the Whiskey by Cole Swindle. They're on their natural path out. And American Oxygen by Rihanna and Nobody Loved by Tori Kelly just losing all traction to fall off the charts. Seems to be a common story when it comes to most of our losers too. AO by Chris Brown and Tyga mercifully falling to 51. 4 or 5 Seconds by Rihanna, Kanye West and Paul McCartney sliding down to 56. Say You Do by Dierks Bentley dropping down to 80. And even Lay Me Down by Sam Smith are just fading naturally. The rest of our list though, well, the surprise for me was Renegades by Ex-Ambassadors dropping to 95. But then again, maybe people just are that sick of the whole Mumford & Sons sound, even if it's not from Mumford & Sons. Get Low by Dylan Francis and DJ Snake is a total non-starter, falling to 96. But then again, DJ Snake's got more charting hit songs, so he's fine right now. Last is Baby Be My Love Song by Easton Corbin going nowhere to 89, and She Don't Love You by Eric Posley regrettably dropping to 91. But then again, it's really a miracle that song that great lasted this long, so kind of expected there. Slightly less miraculous are our gains this week, even if most of them were fairly predictable. Unsurprisingly, Nicki Minaj's The Night Is Still Young jumped up to 66 from his debut last week. Unsurprising as it's the pop hit from that album. And Cheerleader by OMI continues its graceful rise to 31 because it's one of the most lightweight summer songs to grace the chart in a long time. Of course, it can't all be good news because Lean On by Major Lazer, DJ Snake, and Mia jumped up to 36, and Nasty by Bandit Gang Marco featuring Dro goes up to 41, proving that new crunk might not be going away anytime soon. Let's at least hope that it gets better if it chooses to stick around. The game that surprised me the most though was Fight Song by Rachel Platt leading up to 28. I mean, really? It's not a bad song, but in terms of pop music, feels like another done-to-death inspirational song that wouldn't be out of place on Kelly Clarkson's last album that I've almost completely forgotten. And that video only just dropped a few days ago. It wouldn't have impacted the charts just yet and hasn't gotten that many hits. So I have to ask, What's the appeal here? Yeah, whatever. The song is inoffensive enough, I guess, and odds are I'll probably forget about it by the end of this episode. So let's talk about our single returning entry, and hoo boy, it's a doozy. So let me explain late album singles. If you're an artist like Taylor Swift, you and your marketing team will realize pretty quickly that after the first few solid hits, you start getting into kind of shaky territory by the time you hit single number 4 or 5. So you overcompensate. You go over the top. You hype up the video to No Tomorrow, perhaps debut it at a major award show, perhaps bring in a guest star. And just like Lady Gaga and especially Katy Perry before her, Taylor Swift's Bad Blood is both underwhelming as a song and completely ridiculous for everything else. It's her brand of E.T., with Kendrick Lamar filling in for Kanye West. As a track, it's really not all that impressive, if I'm being honest. Production is cavernous and percussion saturated. Only gets interesting when the terminally underweight guitars come in, and Taylor's doing her best Avril Lavigne impression. Guess what? There's another easy comparison there, which honestly is the kind of the reason I like the song in the first place. Of course, the remix amps up the percussion and icy synthesizers even further, completely gutting the guitars. And on top of that, we've got Kendrick Lamar dropping 2 of the laziest verses that he's ever written. Still competently structured. Hey, it is Kendrick. And they do mostly fit with the song's breakup theme, but let's be honest what this is. From Kendrick's appearance on the song as the only guy, all the way to the video that looks like a combination of Sucker Punch and Tron 2, a monumental display of ego. Taylor's got a slew of her female friends in music, art, and fashion. She got them all together and made a sexy empowerment fantasy. And that's fine, guys do this sort of thing all the time. But pairing it with a sour breakup song in a video that features a lot more posing for cameos than Taylor actually kind of being awesome and using all that advanced hardware to kick Selena Gomez's ass, it strikes me as really missing the mark. And really, when you have walls of explosions with no roaring metal guitars and then cut to black right before the fight really starts, yeah, I'm sorry, talk about underwhelming. Not a fan of this. So that was our one returning entry. Now onto our new arrivals, starting with number 94, 1,000 Years by Sawyer Fredericks.
Darling, don't be afraid. I have loved you for 1,000 years. I love you for 1,000 more.
So yes, I know that Sawyer Fredericks won The Voice. Considering he's the only contestant who has had any chart presence for a while now, not exactly surprised by that. Now, given that these charts are approximately a week behind for The Voice, what we get here is one of the semi-final songs, the terminally vapid 1,000 Years by Christina Perri, a song that will forever be associated with the Twilight series in my mind, thanks to its ubiquity in the films and the ridiculous shallowness of the song. Now, to his credit, Fredericks has been getting better as a performer, and this is probably his best performance yet, mostly thanks to sliding the song to a better key for his voice and playing it a little bit more acoustic, which actually turns out to be a pretty solid fit. I like it. I don't ever think I'll be a fan of his shaky warble all that much, but the song keeps him out of his painfully weak upper range, and he does do a lot to really sell the song, even if the lyrics are kind of vapid. Overall, I wasn't really expecting anything better, but it's passable, kind of good. I like this. Number 93, Beautiful Life by Nick Fradiani.
Chase down our every desire. We blaze the night. What if all we've been waiting for all this time reaches such great heights?
Hey, did any of you remember that American Idol was the thing this year? If you followed the pop charts, you sure as hell wouldn't have, because in researching this song, it was the first time I was even aware that American Idol had run for another season, let alone that we had a new winner on our hands. Anyway, this is the original song that we got for him, and wow, I completely get why American Idol is going off the air, because I'm not impressed whatsoever. At least The Voice had a better grasp on its live recordings than this, because the mix balance is completely screwed up, with the guitars buried in the shouty backing vocals nearly on the same level as Fradiani's. As a presence behind the microphone, I mean, he's got energy and a good enough voice, but it's a bad sign that I'm reminded most of Chris Daughtry and the fact that he never really rose above the flavorless mush that American Idol thinks is powerful, complete with the references to haters that don't belong anywhere near this sort of track. I kind of feel bad for Fradiani. He's clearly trying here, but The Voice eclipsed American Idol in terms of relevance on the pop charts a long time ago, and while none of the stars of that show have really stuck their landing, it's not like this new winner is going to do much either. Number 92, Photograph by Ed Sheeran.
Inside the pocket of your ripped jeans, holding me closer till our eyes meet. You won't ever be alone. Wait for me to come home.
So remember what I said about late album singles back with Taylor Swift? Well, Ed Sheeran has opted for that route that has a little bit more dignity, but will likely bring a lot less success. I gotta be honest, I would have preferred that Ed Sheeran released one of his darker singles from Multiply than this. Hell, Bloodstream actually managed to chart in the UK, and it was a good song, and he had songs like A Fire Love, which were fantastic. Instead, following the sure path of Thinking Out Loud, he gives us a pretty straightforward, sentimental love song that confines Ed Sheeran to his dignified falsetto, which is fine, I guess, but it's nowhere near as interesting as his full-throated, soulful voice that I like a lot more. And sure, the song does have some swell and presence, especially with the strings, but from a compositional standpoint, it's nowhere near interesting. At least if this is a hit, it'll unseat Nickelback's hold on this song's title, but I almost prefer Chad Kroger's howling incompetence to this, because while it's pleasant, it'll be forgotten in a few hours after I'm done with it, so yeah, not really caring for this. Number 77, Fun by Pitbull featuring Chris Brown.
Don't disguise the way you wanna love tonight. Oh my mind, hook you with a brand new high. Don't be shy, I just wanna live tonight. A little fun.
So in the first of our appearances from Chris Brown on the charts, yep, for some reason America decided we needed more Chris Brown in our lives for some ungodly reason. He's paired with Pitbull to try and recreate the power of international love on a song called Fun that really owes all its chart appearances to American Idol. Kind of funny, it's eclipsing the actual American Idol winner. And honestly, he doesn't miss the mark by much here, because I actually kind of like this song. Now, I'm not gonna say the writing is anything special or close to good. As much as Pitbull's interjections of some humility at not being a boss, it's not a bad idea. It does make him a little bit more relatable. There's too much clumsiness in the construction of his verses and in Chris Brown's chorus to be all that ignored. But really, the star of the song is in the instrumentation, especially that textured percussion and African-inspired pan flute interlude, which is easily the most interesting part of what was otherwise another slice of retro disco with the horns and guitar. And honestly, a pretty good slice of it. But like with many of the stars this week, Pitbull is stretching to find a late album single. And while he might have found one of the better ones, it's still not much. I'd probably skip it in most days. Number 74, How Many Times by DJ Khaled featuring Chris Brown, Lil Wayne, and Big Sean.
You know how a nigga feel about wasting time. Know how I feel about waiting in line. You know he ain't it, girl, you're wasting your time. You're only this young for a moment in time. Take it in stride. How many times I gotta tell that ass to come on? How many times I gotta tell that ass to come on? How many times?
You know, this might be one of the first times I've really talked about DJ Khaled in any capacity, even despite the fact that he's become a near permanent fixture of mainstream hip-hop for nearly a decade now. First with Terror Squad and then on his own solo hits, which of course are overloaded with guest stars. This time he scoops up Chris Brown, Lil Wayne, and Big Sean for a song complaining about how many times it's gonna take to get your girl to come over and have sex with them. Now, maybe it's just me, but I wouldn't brag or complain that it just takes so much effort on your part to get laid. Doesn't that completely fly in the face of your image as always being able to steal my girl effortlessly? Now, to Lil Wayne's credit, he actually does stay on topic and sounds genuinely aggrieved that he's not getting any reply from this girl. But then we've got Big Sean coming with his run-on sentence flow that frequently falls off the beat, only gets energy midway through the verse, which strikes me as the wrong choice, ventures completely off topic, and then joins Chris Brown in jacking the Migos flow. Oh yeah, because Chris Brown raps. I thought we all remembered from Look at Me Now that that should never happen anymore. It's really that verse that knocks this song from forgettable to painfully mediocre, if not worse. And as usual, DJ Khaled plays the P. Diddy hype man role, shouting, "Live life!" Yeah, for that, he's got the main credit on the track. Yeah, I'm sorry, no, this is lousy. Next. Number 67, This Summer's Gonna Hurt Like a Motherfucker by Maroon 5. So here's something you probably don't know much about me. Since I spend so much time actually listening through full albums during the week, I don't tend to hear a lot of terrible songs that pop up on the radio first or on streaming. Instead thinking that if I wait to cover them on Billboard Breakdown first, they'll inevitably show up here. And so when I started hearing the buzz that the newest single from Maroon 5 was absolute garbage, I bided my time and knew that I'd have to talk about it eventually. It would come on Billboard Breakdown. Turns out I wasn't wrong, because we might have the most unpleasant Maroon 5 single that I've heard in a long time. I'll give it this. yes, it does evoke images of summer for me, most notably the swirling headache I get when I sit out in the sun for too long, mostly because the production is a runny, smeared over mess that has none of the band's old trademark tightness thanks to being dominated by percussion and hazy synths that are somehow barely having any melody, that are then complemented by Adam Levine's caterwauling that is nothing close to driving energy and power, which you need when you have such a monumentally unpleasant and limp melody line with all the minor keys. And that's before we even get to the lyrics, which are straight in the one more night role of describing a miserable situation that still involves Adam Levine getting laid and then relentlessly insulting the girl as being vapid that he's sleeping with. This coming from a guy who titled his song "This Summer's Gonna Hurt Like a Motherfucker." Now that's poetry for you. No, I'm sorry. This is easily the worst Maroon 5 song since Payphone, and in just world where burn away the last of Sugar's goodwill and take the band with it. Since we don't live in a just world, man, this summer's gonna hurt like a motherfucker. And finally, number 57, I'm Coming Over by Chris Young.
Save it for another time. Try not to think about you, but it ain't working. Why put out a fire when it's still burning? Just when I think moving on's getting closer, I'm coming over.
Oh man, it's nice to get something good to round out the week. And from a country artist, I'm so happy to see with a new leadoff single. I was way kinder than most critics to Chris Young's last album, AM. Mostly because it took a lot of bro country cliches and probably made the best possible songs out of them by telling more stories and kicking the instrumentation to heavier territory. Plus, you have Chris Young, who sits in the same categories and act like Randy Houser as some of the best male country vocalists in terms of raw charisma and power as a singer. In any case, it seems like Chris Young was one of the very few people who actually paid attention to where country seems to be trending, because I'm Coming Over, it does a lot right in the instrumentation. Washed out steel guitars to the front to present a melody over the gentle beat paired with real drums, production that has a little bit more of a rock edge and honestly could use a little bit more texture but does maintain a good flow, and a pretty solid guitar solo to round it all out. Hell, even the lyrics aren't bad, capturing the back and forth that comes when there's still an attraction in a faded relationship that ultimately has to end. Yeah, okay, Blake Shelton did something similar with Ashley Monroe in Lonely Tonight, but Chris Young is in such a better presence in front of the microphone, he easily knocks Blake Shelton out of the water. Yes, I know, it's nowhere near the best thing that he's ever recorded, he's had better singles, and I do miss the heavier, more defiantly country tones, but you know what, in a week like this, I'll take what I can get. So yeah, that was the week of our halfway point in the Billboard year, and wow, most of the new arrivals were mediocre or forgettable at best. For the worst, Maroon 5's The Summer's Gonna Hurt Like a Motherfucker easily takes that, with DJ Khaled, Big Sean, Chris Brown, and Lil Wayne taking the dishonorable mention. For the best, well, okay, Chris Young runs away with it for I'm Coming Over, but honorable mention, it really is a toss-up for me between three songs, and you know what? I think I'm gonna give it to 1,000 Years by Sawyer Fredericks, and believe me, I never thought I'd say that. But with an underwhelming remix and a bland guest verse hobbling Bad Blood, and sloppy writing really knocking back fun, I might as well commend Fredericks for at least being the most improved the number of times I've covered him. Hell, he might actually have a good song charting next week before I never end up seeing him again. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.